Welcome to Mall-UN with Chris. My name is Chris, and I'll be your host for this. And here's my team. Alright, so now let's talk about argument content. So this is your classic thing from English. Elementary school, who, what, when, where, why. Let's talk about those. Alright, so this is actually quite similar to writing an essay. As you know, essay is basically just an extended argument. So if you're really good at essays, this might work for you. If not, I'm going to use essay as an example because it's a useful skill for you in high school anyways. So let's talk about it. What you say. Okay, let's go back to my previous example about terrorism being bad. So you say terrorism is bad, you put out these facts, that's your argument. Those are your pillars. That's what you say in an essay. That's what your main topic sentence is. That's what your thesis is. Those are your arguments. That's what you say. Okay. In a Mall-UN conference, speeches are quite shorter compared to an essay, so you do have to get your point across fairly quickly. Usually 1 or 2 points. If you really want to be gutsy about it, take 3, no more. Typically speaking, of course. Next is how you say it, alright? You can say terrorism is bad, or you can say terrorism is something that should be eradicated from this earth because it is killing innocent people and it is a plague on society. That's a lot stronger than terrorism is bad, but really they mean the same thing. It also makes you sound a lot smarter and more eloquent. So that's another tip for you. Use adjectives, synonyms for some things, and you can just repeat yourself. Instead of saying terrorism is bad, you can say terrorism is a plague on society. It is the root of all evils. It is the worst thing to ever happen to mankind. Wasn't that beautiful? I sound so smart. Alright, so let's talk about the next thing. When you say it, alright? So it's important to understand when you're saying things in the committee. You don't want to come right out of floodgates and say, you know what, we need to bomb them right away. That's something Trump would say. Do you want to be Donald Trump? Alright, so what you want to do is you have to understand and have an understanding of how things are going to flow. Just as in an essay, you would present your arguments so they make logical sense, right? You have your first argument, you have your second argument, your third argument, everything leading to each other. That's what you want to do. You don't want to just say something arbitrarily and then have it not lead into something else. If you don't have an answer, why pose the question, right? You pose the question, then you answer the question. That's what works. You also jump on the opportunity. If you have allies, maybe from your own school, if you want to stage things together, you have one person make the question, which is something that might be really good for the whole committee, and you have someone answer the question. That's another great way to strategize and work with your allies. However, again, that doesn't always work. You have to be, you'll have to have the flexibility and fluidity to adapt to debate. So there's the last 2 things we're talking about. Why you're saying it and who you're saying it to. There are certain things that you need to understand when you're talking about the committee. Why are you saying something? Why are you saying that terrorism is bad? You have to find motive. There's reason for this, right? It's the same thing as in an essay. Well, my teacher told me to write this, that's why I'm writing this. That's not your argument. That's not your thesis. You have to take a stance on it, right? So the idea is terrorism is bad. France believes terrorism is bad because in light of the Paris attacks, well, and our war on terror, we think terrorism is a bad thing. We want to eradicate it. This is a plague in society. That's something France would say. That is motive to it. Now, as you know, some smaller countries such as the delegation of Belize might not have terrorists to deal with. However, Belize can still talk about it. No one wants terrorists to come into their country and start shooting them or bombing them or killing them. Okay, given that that's something that Trump always says. But the point is even little countries can deal with small global terrorism because you have to understand, terrorism affects all of humankind. We can't just isolate it to one country or big country or superpowers. It's not about that. So find ways, creative ways to tie yourself back into this and give a reason to say why you're saying that. If you're a smaller country, advocate for smaller countries to take action. Rally up the smaller countries. That's a great way to take action. If you're a larger country, pull on all your sources. If you're a member of NATO, pull on other NATO members. Look up what NATO stands for. Look up for those kind of things. Understand the ideology. That's the type of research you need to do. Lastly, let's talk about who you're saying it to. So there are times in the Mall-UN conference that's very long, right? Mall-UN conference sessions are quite long, several hours on end. You want to be able to understand who you're speaking to. There are times when you're speaking to the entire committee, you want votes, you want certain individuals. If you're a smaller country such as Belize, and you want to rally other smaller countries, and you talk about how you're how terrorism affects you as a smaller country, why other smaller countries should care about this, right? You're talking to them, you're not necessarily talking to large countries such as Russia, the United States, or China, etc. So that's what you want to do. That's your target audience, that's your demographic. There are other times where you're speaking directly to the chair, right? If nothing's happening in the committee, you want to say, delegates, we do not think, the Belize does not think that we've been making any progress. We're sitting here in our red tape, we're discussing fruitless matters, we need to take action, move towards stronger things to defeat this global terrorism, to wipe this plague off of the earth, right? That's something that you're saying to the chair. You're showing the chair that you understand that the committee isn't progressing as it should. You're also addressing other delegates who feel the same way as you to try to progress the committee. This is a way you can stand out. This is something that you want to look towards. Of course, don't just say this just because you can. Like, if the committee actually isn't making any progress, then you might say something like that. This is just an example. Who you're saying it to. You want to be able to talk about whether you're talking to a certain members of nations, talking to NATO, if you're drawing on NATO ideals, or you're talking to the chair. Also, face the committee. Turn around. If you're sitting in the front of the committee, maybe turn right around and talk to the entire committee that way. There are different things that you need to be able to do. Know who you're talking to, know what you're going to say, why you're saying it, when you say it, and what you're saying. Most important, get your point across. Hope this helped.